Hi, everyone. Tanya Hertz here. I am the founder and director of the Regional Entrepreneurship Center Rec Innovation Lab at San Diego Miramar College, and also an associate professor of entrepreneurship at Miramar, and teach also at San Diego State. And I know that we have people here from all of our different from all over San Diego, from different colleges, and but the majority are probably here from the Rec Innovation Lab. And wherever you're from, welcome. We're happy to have you here at this workshop. We have with us today an entrepreneur and a colleague and a partner of the Rec Innovation Lab. We have with us Bryce, who is a co-founder of a company called Harness, and he is, for those of you who are rec entrepreneurs and founders, he is the one of the founders of the Rec Connect platform that we use to communicate with one another. So he has lots of experience in entrepreneurship, and he's going to share with us a little bit about himself, about sales strategy, and talk a little more, or dive a little deeper into the sales topics. So with that, I'm going to let Bryce talk about it himself, and welcome everyone. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat. Kiara is here to answer them, or not to answer them, to let us know that they are that they're there. And Bryce, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction. And I see some familiar names, not so many faces, but familiar names. So hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Again, like Tanya mentioned, I'm co-founder of Harness, which is the Rec Connect platform. So if you're not on there, you better be on there. That's coming from the co-founder now. So so I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and I'll dig deeper into the sales stuff. So I'm actually originally from Orange County, California. Grew up with higher education and just education in general not being important. Was failing out of almost every single grade, failing out of high school. Almost got kicked out multiple times. So, everybody right now who's in higher education and going for school, no matter what age or where you're at, that's so important. And I'm kudos to all of you. So what I did was outside of the Navy, or outside of the high school, I ended up just joining the military, because that's where you go if you're about to get kicked out of high school. And so I joined the military, served 4 years on the Anti-Submarine Warfare teams and anti-piracy boarding teams over in Japan. Got out and ended up going to Orange Coast Community College. But that was my first experience into college. I loved the community college aspect. The amount of thought leaders, community people, teachers, and passion that's driven through community colleges is so important. And if it wasn't for Orange Coast Community College, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. So, but yeah, I'm currently working obviously on my startup Harness, and I'm a full-time student as well. So if you're a student founder, it's totally doable. You can scale a company globally and be a student. It's not easy, but it's doable. So I graduate this December with my bachelor's, and I actually start a master's program in January. So the lifelong learner. So just keep pushing on it. But yeah, we actually originally started Harness at UC Berkeley with one of my co-founders, who is I met him in the Navy. But the way we started was we recognized that on university campuses there was a siloed aspect to entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of programs, resources, people, faculty, alumni, students that were not collaborating together and not leveraging each other's or each other's resources. And so we built a portal over at UC Berkeley that kind of housed everything, and that's kind of grown to what it is today with the Rec Connect. Some of our partnerships are throughout the UC system, the CSU system, LMU, contracts across the nation, and now we've worked with contracts in Canada, Saudi Arabia, and Somalia in programs over there. So for why I'm going to be talking about getting your first 10 clients and why that's so important. I do want to iterate first off, I do have a little bit under 10 years of experience in sales. That doesn't mean I know everything. I could be wrong on some of this stuff for your industry. All I know is that the experiences that I've had, the learning points that I've had, and then also this applies to my type of industry or B2B style of industry. And then another kind of disclaimer on this, I'm not going to be talking about pitching at all during this call, because I actually think that's almost something that you may want to veer away from on your first 10 clients. But if you do want to know about pitching or anything like that, let me know offline. You can send me a request or a message on the Rec Connect. So all that being said, I will share my screen. All right, so everybody can see my screen? Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry, yes, we can see it.
Awesome, so yeah, getting your first 10 clients, 10 paying clients, and Bryce, co-founder, chief strategy officer at Harness. So I'm going to be talking about 4 things that are extremely important when it comes to getting your first 10 clients. It's going to be your product, your team, your process, and your persistence. Probably not what you would have thought when you came into this call, but it'll all link together, I promise. So the first thing we're going to talk about is your product. So obviously when you're going into a pitch or going into working with clients, even at at any stage, you want to make sure that you have a product that's going to solve a problem. And so something that's extremely important is having that MVP, so minimal viable product. And why I think this is important when it comes to getting your first 10 clients is you're actually understanding a problem within a client or a problem within an industry. And so this is going to give you the opportunity to really validate some of your learnings and make sure that your product itself can solve at least one problem. That should be your goal. Can my product solve one problem within, with these clients? If you can answer that, I answer yes, and you can back that up with either case studies or data or interviews with people, then you should be able to get at least 10 clients. The next thing is going to be, is your product attached to the right price? So for Harness, something that we've really struggled with in the past, and we've been around for 3 years now, is the pricing, right? Understanding the idea of pricing on profitability versus credibility. So in the very early stages, when you're trying to get investors, maybe pre-seed investors or some sort of angel or friends and family, a lot of people may be hooked on this sense of, okay, well, what's your MRR, which is your monthly revenue, or your ARR, so your annual revenue. And they want to look at that because they're looking at, okay, what's your profit at, or are you profitable yet? Are you on the trail to profitability? And something to be really cognizant of, though, is when you're getting your first 10 clients, you don't have a product, and I'm saying this with, or take this with a grain of salt. You don't have a product that's better than probably one of your competitors. And I know that's hard to hear because you've put so much time and effort into it, and you think that you have the greatest thing since sliced bread. But at the end of the day, if there's been a competitor that's around longer than you that has more clients, they may just be a little bit further along than you, and that's okay. But what you need to understand is now what that means is that you can't be in the sense of profitability or looking at profitability. So make sure you're looking at your price point in a way of, how can I make it so it's a lower barrier of entry for them to adopt your platform, your product, or whatever it is, and be able to still gain credibility. And so that's something that's extremely important, is when you're getting your first 10 clients, make sure you have the mindset, I want to build credibility. I don't need to have, at least in my industry, again, I don't need to have 50,000 or 60,000 monthly revenue on my first 10 clients. I just need to make sure that they believe in us as a product and they believe that we're going to continuously grow. Even right now, where we're at the stage that we're at, where we do have a good amount of clients, we're still looking at this as, how can we just grow our credibility even more? And the next thing with the product is, does your product come with an experience? So why I say this is that, and I think, I mean, Tanya could probably even attest to this, is that for us as a company, we very much so focus on, something that we can control. And I'll go into that kind of on the next slide. But what we can control is that experience, right? You can't always control, where your product's at because you have restraint resources. You may want to be having all of these features, or, again, I'm talking more on my end of my industry. But when you're talking, or when you're working with clients, you want to make sure that you are focusing more on the experience that you can provide for them, because that's something that you can control. And you as a team have this passion because you built this product. So really come alongside the initiatives and the problem that the client is having to be almost an extension of that team, right? And so that's kind of on the product side, right? Make sure you have a great MVP. And it's validated. Don't just say it's an MVP because you thought it was a problem. Make sure you're interviewing, make sure you're looking at your users, make sure you're looking at your consumers, and make sure it's actually solving at least one problem. Make sure you look at credibility building opposed to profitability building, and make sure that you can provide an absolute amazing experience for your first 10 clients. I mean, really for all your clients, but your first 10 are going to be your make it or break it. The next thing is the team. So I kind of touched on this already, but what you should look at as well is when you're going into the startup realm, first off, sales is extremely scary. I've seen so many times where startups don't even want to they don't really want to think about sales. They just want to think about their product because they're afraid of the no. They're afraid of, everything that comes along with sales, which is, obviously, all the no's, all the kind of logistics, the time frame that it takes to schedule a product or to sell a product. There's a lot of things and a lot of moving parts. So what I do recommend is make sure that there's somebody in your early stages that's designated for sales. And that could be your CEO, that could be, for me, a chief strategy officer, that could be a chief revenue officer. But I recommend having a co-founder that can do sales. And that's kind of the difference between, you're getting those non-technical founders versus their technical founders. I know software engineers are super smart and amazing, but in my experience, they're not the best salespeople, right? Not the way that they work. And that's not always true. So I'm not going to say that's black and white, but from my experience, they're not always the best salespeople. And also on top of that, they're usually focused more on building the product. And that's where you want them anyways, because sales is a black hole. And that's coming from a salesperson. So make sure you have somebody designated for sales. And something that I also recommend is, and I think this is with any entrepreneur or any startup, right? You want to get somebody who's skilled but not doesn't have the inability to change and mold into something new, right? And I'll kind of go into it a little bit more on the next slide. But for me, I had a lot of sales experience, and I thought one way. I thought one way was going to be the best successful way because that's how I've been successful in sales in the past. I was incorrect, and I'll tell you a little story on the next slide. But make sure you're having somebody who has the willingness to change and willingness to test out new things, because at the end of the day, they've never sold this product because it's new and innovative, because it's a startup company. They've never sold the product. They've also never, they may not have ever been in a startup before, or they at least have never been in a team with you. And then the next thing is going to be control your controllables. So your controllables are, client experience, and for product experience, you can't control the product experience 100% for your clients. As much as you want to say you can, I just don't believe that in my experience. And I don't think that's correct. But what you can control is the client experience, because your team, right? So you want to have a team that all has a collective idea to ensure that the client success is most important in the beginning, because the when you're going to new, for me, for instance, when we're going to new universities or working with cities or different programs, I want to be able to use my past clients as case studies, as people to make introductions with, to show that, hey, they've been successful. And that's kind of where we stand. And it's also nice to be able to control something in the entrepreneurial journey. You can't control a lot of things during the journey itself, but I think client experience is something you can. And kind of reverting back to the last slide, you really want to be able to come alongside and be an extension of their team for your first 10 clients. So this is where we're kind of getting into now the meat of it, right? How do we actually get those clients on board? And so the first thing is going to be the process, right? The process is extremely important, and I do want to tell you a little story about myself in my role. So I came onto the team about 2 years ago as a co-founder when the platform was already up at UC Berkeley, but the team was very scarce and they wanted another co-founder. So I came onto the team and I was running all the sales strategies and sales planning, and for about 2 years, we stayed at UC Berkeley on purpose, doing user research and making sure that we proved our product appropriately. But once we went into sales, we were ready. We had a lot of interest from other universities, a lot of interest from different programs. And so me having the mentality that I had, being in sales for almost 10 years, is, I know exactly what to do in my sales, sales planning. And I'm just going to take what I learned in all these corporate jobs, all these larger jobs, and I'm going to apply it to my startup company. Well, that's not how it works at all. You can maybe use some of it, but in the long run, it's for us at least, it didn't prosper. So it came to a point where I was saying, all right, I'm going to source a bunch of leads. I sourced 6,000 7,000 leads. I'm going to, build my credibility through, reaching out to them, in a mass email or mass call list. And then I'm going to circle around and try to reach out to them, this way and this way. And at the end of the day, during that whole entire process that, I've always learned as being the best way to get somebody on the phone or best way to get a meeting, I think I ended up with maybe like 1 or 2 meetings, and they didn't close at all. And that was a few months of our time. And it came to a point where, my co-founder and my team came up to me and said, hey, are you the right person for this job? And obviously that's really hard to hear as a co-founder. And I think that's something that, all of you as entrepreneurs, you need to recognize too. At the end of the day, the business is the most important thing. If you're the person on the side of you doesn't believe in the same thing, can't contribute in the way that they can, it might be better just to let them go their separate ways for the wellness of the company. And so obviously I got scared by that, and I was like, no, I know exactly what I'm doing, or I know I can do this. And so I just kind of went straight back to square one. And since then, we've grown the platform tremendously. We've gotten global contracts. We've gotten contracts around the nation. So obviously, as we started doing some things right. And some of the things that what we've recognized, and what I need to recognize, is that, I can't plan a full sales process without experience your customer interactions. And so what I recommend is, in their early stages, is just meet with people. Don't pitch them in your first call. Don't do any of that stuff. Reach out to them on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, email, whatever the best avenue works for your specific product, and just try to jump on a call with them. It's actually surprising how many people are willing to give you 15 minutes of their time. And time's the most valuable thing anyways. So they're willing to give you 15 minutes of your time. They're willing to kind of talk to you, and just talk to them about, kind of obviously veer towards what your product's going to provide, but talk to them about what their needs are and what is important to them. Because the key thing is understanding what is most important to that client, and what is a problem that they're having and how can you solve it. And so what I recommend is just having calls. If they want to see your product, that's great. If at the end of the call, they are like, oh yeah, I'll chat again with you, then you can schedule maybe a demo or something, or just schedule another time for them to give feedback on what you can provide. And what this will also do is it's starting to build this kind of credibility standpoint, right? It's building this belief in your team, because at the end of the day, when somebody buys a product in these early stages, you want them to buy into you and buy into your team, not just the product. Because at the end of the day, in 1 year, if they want to leave and they just got sold on the product or sold on features, they're going to leave you. They're going to leave you for something else. But at the end of the year, if there's some things that they were unhappy with or some things that they were happy with, but they truly believed in what your team was doing and they were sold on you and your team, they're more likely to stay with you. And that's kind of the mentality that we've taken, is really building that rapport and looking at them as humans. The next thing is where are you sourcing your leads? Early stages, cold calls is great. I mean, it could be great. It depends on your product. But make sure you leverage the heck out of your network. So leverage your network, ask for introductions. It's all about working smarter and not harder, right? All of you have a massive amount of network, I'm sure, especially if you've been part of the rec or if you're even in San Diego. San Diego receives entrepreneurs very well. So leverage your network, leverage the people in your community to just get in front of potential clients. Because when you do that, there's already a rapport building, there's already an aspect of a belief in you, and there's already an aspect of credibility. You're not starting at square one. But also with this, it's easier to talk to them as a startup and saying, hey, you are my first client, or hey, you are my second client, and we're innovating, we're consistently creating, but I want to be able to, have you adopt it and give us feedback and really kind of being a part of our team and being part of our development of our product. And so just make sure you're working a lot smarter than harder. I've done the work harder thing, sourcing leads from everywhere, and it's just not, sometimes you may need it, but for your first 10 clients, it should be network and introductions. And the next thing is make sure that you have a low barrier when it comes to onboarding. So kind of another story to tell you is, after we left UC Berkeley, our next client was actually UC Riverside. And it took us 9 months to close UC Riverside for a 3-year contract. And just to let you know, that's a very long time. That was way, we lost a lot of money on that contract actually, because it took us 9 months. And the reason being is because, there was some contract conflicts, there was some procurement conflicts when working with universities, some payment conflicts. So everything that could go wrong did go wrong in that circumstance. So make sure you're really looking at every single time you're adopting a new person, or even when you're not adopting people and you're having those initial phone calls, ask them what the process looks like, right? What would the process be for adoption? Do I need to deal with a procurement? Do I need to deal with different types of contracts? Do you have your own terms that we need to abide by? And make sure you're kind of working on that realm of things, is understanding what barriers. So, I mean, and again, Tanya could probably attest to this, we've made the adoption process now pretty easy. We've decreased our closing time about 90%. Just because we've learned, okay, these are the documents that we need to have prepared. These are the insurances. These are the service agreements. This is the different way that, universities and cities and organizations that we're working with go through their contracting and procurement process. Also with this, kind of going back to the pricing thing, another barrier is pricing. Sometimes, obviously, when you're getting your first 10 clients, you'll need to give deals, or need to be at a lower price point because they're kind of taking a risk on you. So make sure you look at a pricing that does lower the barrier, but doesn't put you in a place to where you can't say, oh, somebody will pay for this contract. Don't be giving out things for free all the time. You may have to give, 5-6 months free, and that's okay. But make sure when you're doing that, it's in an agreement that they're going to be making, going back to using your network. If you're going to give people deals, make sure you're getting something out of it when it comes to introductions and networking. And that's not a bad thing to say and a bad mentality to have. It's just the mentality of saying, we want a true win-win for our company and a win-win for just between the company and the client. But yeah, when it comes to pricing, it's a very complex issue, and don't sell yourself short as well, just to lower the barrier. And the next part is going to be persistence. And this is going to be something that is going to be the absolute closing, whether you're going to make it in the startup world of sales or you're not. And that's going to be persistence. So I love having this data up here. And so what this shows, it's showing almost 50% of salespeople in startups, or actually just in general, don't follow up on with their prospects. And it goes all the way down to only 10% follow up with contacts 3 or more. I'll tell you right now, I've had to contact somebody 20 times before I close them. And it's not because they're ignoring you. Sometimes they are, but it's sometimes, they're very busy individuals. Their emails are inundated, their LinkedIns are inundated, their Facebooks, whatever it is, are inundated with messages or, salespeople trying to contact them in their kind of their sales tactic ways. But make sure you're always following up with people. That's even if they're saying no at the time, right? I've had 6-month follow-ups where they went with a totally different platform, one of our competitors, and I followed up with them 6 months later, and they said, "Oh man, this platform's not great. We wish we would have went with you. Contact us at the end of this contract." Right? So always be following up. Always be, being persistent with your sales and your clients. And the other side of the things is saying, looking at where sales are made. Right? 80% of sales are made from your 5th to 12th contact. And I would even go further, saying 12 isn't enough until they tell you, "I don't want to talk to you anymore, and you need to just stop bothering me." I mean, that's when you can say, "Okay, all right, well, I'll back off now." So make sure you're persistent in this, and this is why also it's extremely important to have somebody on sales, 100% on sales early on. Maybe not when you're getting your first 10 clients. Maybe you have a team of 2 people or 3 people, so people need to be wearing other hats. But make sure you're at least allocating 80 to 90% of their time being on sales just to get your first 10 clients, because it's a long game, and it's extremely important, obviously, to be persistent with people. And yeah, that's kind of how we've gotten our first 10 clients, and I can kind of tell you a little bit more too. All these things are that were on this slide were things that I've learned, and items that we've actually applied to get our first 10 clients, our first 20 and above clients. And so it kind of sounds, complex or kind of sounds out of the water and not the traditional thing that you've heard. And, I just want to reiterate, this is what I've learned. This is the things that have gone through our process, coming from somebody who's been in sales and also in larger corporations and been in startup sales. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to see if there was what questions were there.
Thank you so much for that that presentation. That was so helpful. Such good information in there. And so I'm not sure if Kiara and the other student interns do we have any questions in the chat? I think she might be on mute there. So it doesn't look like there are any there in the chat. So does anybody else have any questions for Bryce? Just make sure to unmute your microphone if you do. Any other questions from the audience? So I actually have a question. I get a lot of times people asking about sales from the perspective of an entrepreneur, and they're afraid of coming across as pushy or demanding, and they will sometimes be so nice that they nice themselves out of a sale. They don't close. They don't ask for they don't ask for the sale. Is there some advice that you can give people to still be professional and come across as but without being pushy?
Yes, there's a way to be not pushy, and I'm a big advocate of not being pushy within the sales. So I think the first thing is like I mentioned, early on, at least you want to make sure that you're just getting a meeting, right? That should be your goal. Get a meeting with the person, get to know what their needs are, get to know, obviously if you can fill the needs. But something that I would say is that have confidence in your product, have confidence in what you're doing, right? You don't have to be pushy, but you can say, hey, my product will solve this problem. And you got to just say it, right? And kind of say, obviously gauge on what how the conversation's going. Don't just flat out, mention that in the middle of the conversation. But what I would mention is just saying, it seems like these problems are pretty predominant. You're losing out on money and you're losing out on time because you don't have a solution. I have a solution for you, and this has been done through extensive research. Even on the early stage, leverage your research that you've done, right? Because they haven't done it. Right. They're too busy doing other things. If they've done the research, they would have solved the problem for themselves.
You're helping them. That's, they need this. They want a solution to the problem, right? So
yeah. So that's kind of my perspective on it is don't be pushy, but be confident in what you're doing. And don't be manipulative either. Be straight out on what you're talking about. I jump on when I reach out to people, I use LinkedIn mainly. I reach out to them and I say, this is, I have a startup company, but my biggest thing is I want to see if there's synergy with us. And I also want to see if you have any feedback on what we're doing. And after the first call, I either have people saying, wow, like what you're doing is awesome. Like, can I see a demo? Or, wow, this is awesome. This may not fit for me, but I have an introduction I can make for you.
Right.
Like, okay. That's great.
Let me then ask you this. What do you think the role is in having a good network in being successful and in sales? Do you think, do you rely heavily on that network or,
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. I think just as an entrepreneur, have a good network because first off, entrepreneurship is one of the loneliest jobs in the world. And people always say, it's lonely at the top. Well, it's also lonely at the top when you're the only person in the company. And so, it is a lonely business. So I think just in general on entrepreneurship, make sure you have a network that supports you. That's also like-minded individuals. San Diego is one of the best areas for entrepreneurship that I've ever seen. And I literally study ecosystems for my company. And so that's important. But also on the sales side, yes, consistently network with people, reach out to individuals. I designate it where on Mondays and Wednesdays, I literally go through my LinkedIn and I just search people. I search companies, I search organizations, and I just LinkedIn request them just to be in my network. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, my meetings are on my Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then Fridays I follow up with people. And at the end of the day, the worst thing that somebody's going to say when you reach out to them on LinkedIn or email is no, or they'll ignore you. And guess what? Move on to the next one.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, they're missing out on it since you've done the research and you can solve something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love this. That's great advice. And I agree. I think, you have to have just as strong of a network as possible. And we are in the right place for entrepreneurship. I'm so proud of San Diego's ecosystem. It's collaborative. It is supportive. It's the place to be. I'm proud for my little part in the San Diego entrepreneurship ecosystem. So I'm glad that you say that. It makes me feel good. And I love that you said it's lonely at the top, even when you're the only one there, or there's a couple people. You don't have to be a huge company for entrepreneurship to be stressful and lonely, and you can It's almost more stressful when you're not successful. So Karen has a question about suggestions that you might have for improving sales. Like,
Yeah. So I'm actually going to answer. Angelica had a question earlier, so I want to make sure I'm going in order. It says, can you have a 2-person team? Yes, absolutely. Especially early on. We have 9 employees now, but early on it was me, and early on it was only one person, right? Built the platform, got interns to help build the platform. It's just all about allocating, what's important, right, for that stage of your company. So if you have 2 people, see where your strengths are. If you have similar strengths, that's great. Bring on interns that have strengths and things that you don't have, or bring on, other people that have that. But yeah, you can have a 2-person team and still do sales, still do all that. And that's why it's important for your network, right? And to get introductions and use your network, because when you have a 2-person team, putting 80% into sales is sometimes, almost impossible sometimes. But that's why you have to be a little bit smarter and more efficient with your time. And to do that is just using your network and just networking with more people. So you can have a 2-person team. And if you do have any of the questions too, I do some I kind of look into startups and look into team dynamics, and that's kind of where my studies academically have been. So you can definitely reach out to me and I can help you out with some team dynamics as well. And then Karen had, what suggestions would you have or would you give to improve your sales for entrepreneurs? I would say get off of YouTube. Stop watching all the sales people on YouTube, and start talking to people that you can have a conversation with. Maybe I needed that. I looked up a lot of sales videos. I've always have my whole entire career, and the thing that's prospered most is getting mentors that know sales, right, or know your industry. So that's going to be the first thing to improve your sales aspect, because it's great to learn from other people's mistakes. And that's why I like presenting on this aspect. And then the next thing that I'd say to improve your sales is try new things. Do A/B testing on what works. Test out what kind of conversations work. For instance, for us, I've gone in where I've done mass emails. I've gone into meetings where I pitch right away and don't say anything. I don't tell them anything about myself. I've done all these different things to test to see what works and gets most received. And at the end of the day, now we have a repeatable model that works. To get it, we get a high percentage of our meetings, and then along with that, we get a high percentage of second meetings and demos, right? So make sure you're just always testing out new things that work. And I think that would be the best way. Through just trial and error and mentorship. And the rec has amazing mentors, just to let you guys know.
I agree.
And so the next question, you talk about the journey of acquiring 10 clients. How long did it take you and your team at Harness to get your first client? Was it hard path? To get your first client. Well, ours is a little bit different, because what we did was we actually launched the platform at UC Berkeley without closing them as a contract. We just launched a portal and said, all right, we're going to organically and do whatever we can to get traction on the platform. So more jobs were created, people were raising funds, people were connecting, alumni were getting engaged. And so by that time, we had a little bit of credibility and a little bit of traction to where we were able to, go to the offices of, the entrepreneur programs. Along with that, our CEO had a good relationship with the Blackstone Launchpad Director, which is a foundation that helps higher education entrepreneurs. So for us, it was a little bit different. But I think what is common in that is understanding, find a champion of you. and start building and make sure that they keep on championing you, they keep on helping you out, and then have them be your first client, right? And in that, whether you have to give them, some equity or give them a board seat or just allow them to speak into your product, do that and close them as a first client, and then they'll be able to make many other introductions. And so we didn't really have a time frame on getting our first client. Now, outside of the UC Berkeley, like I said, it didn't take us very long to get them to say yes. It took us long for us to get them to say yes and all the contracts to go through. And yes, all sales is a hard path. Sales are just hard, and I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it for you. It's hard, but I know everybody can do it. If you're an entrepreneur, you can do it, because that means you're resilient, you're innovative, and you can think in a different perspective. And that's what you need for sales. And not enough salespeople have that. So I know you can all do that.
So Bryce, I just wanted to add something. So I had a lot of sales experience in my life, years and years of sales, and took away lots from it. But one of the things that I found was really helpful is to behave like children when they want something. They have no problem asking you 20, 30, 40 times. They don't know means nothing to them. And so I try to be like my nieces and nephews when I'm selling, to just to not let that no affect me and ask for the ice cream again, right?
Yeah.
Give in, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's totally right. And something that I when I spoke yesterday was, your no's are going to happen and they're inevitable. But if you can turn that hard no into an introduction, that means it's a win. I still get people to this day who said no to me 6-7 months ago that are giving me introductions to, potential clients, and vice versa. I give them introductions to potential people that can work with them. So, a no is just another opportunity.
Right. And that's another great point. Don't ever burn your bridges when it comes to sales. You never know when that no is going to change into something else.
Absolutely. And then next question, if experience is missing and just starting, if experience is missing and just starting, how do you reply to that professionally to convince clients? So if I'm
I think what they're saying is, if you don't have a lot of experience, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, it depends. So if you're looking at getting, your clients, you have to leverage the experience that you do have, right? And it's not, again, manipulating them or lying. If you've done a lot of research, which I know, being a mentor in the Rec Connect, I know the process and I know how much research actually is required to, get to the next stages. You do have experience, right? You have experience in this research, the numbers, right? Or at least you should. And so what I would say is that, obviously leverage that aspect, and then also leverage the aspect of, especially when you're getting your first few clients, of saying, I want you to be, part of the development of what I'm doing. I want you to be a co-creator almost. And that's something that I would recommend, right? So, and then the more, and then along with that, the more you go through sales calls or people saying no, the more you'll gain kind of the sales experience as well. Even now with the experience I have, I've jumped on a phone and I've had people basically tell me that, cuss me out and say that I'm manipulative and all this stuff. And so it doesn't matter how much experience you're going to get. You're always going to get people like that, that don't even want to be convinced. And then something also to touch on the convincing clients part. It's not so much convincing them that they need you, right? It's putting a light on the problem that they have zero solution to. And that's kind of the way I would look at it, right? If you're digging and digging and digging and always having to convince the person, first off, it's draining. And secondly, they're not bought into you or your company, right? So shine a light on their problem and just keep pressing that pain point, right? Ask them how much that's costing them, how much time that's costing them, right? And just be blunt with them too. Salespeople that beat around the bush are people who aren't going to close, and for the most part, they're not going to close and are going to burn their bridge. So just ask them, straight up what their pain point is and what's important to them.
Yeah, put yourself out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So do we have any other? I think we might have time for one more question if we have it. And I think that's it then. Would you like to maybe take us out, Bryce, with a comment or?
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for jumping on here. I just want to say first off, the Rec Connect obviously is a great program. All the programs in San Diego have their own niche and their own level of importance. So always look at San Diego as a whole. And this is coming from somebody who I just moved here 2 months ago. Definitely look at that. And then also along with that, just don't be fearful of reaching out to people, whether it's for networking, sales, anything like that. Because at the end of the day, a no is just a word. That's not going to do anything. It's not going to hurt you physically. And then also, actually, the last thing, as an entrepreneur, and especially in sales, make sure you're taking care of your mental health. If you can't be 100% at during your day, that means you need a break.
Yeah.
If you're at 90%, that means you need a break that's going to rejuvenate you to 10%. Especially, in sales and entrepreneurship in general. I've had burnout. I've had all that. And so please focus on that, because if you're not healthy, the company is not healthy, and then the company will die. So
that's great advice. That is such good advice. I know we have a tendency as entrepreneurs to be overachievers, kind of type A, and we want to make things happen, but just sometimes just a little step back, a little rest can do such good things for your mind and body. So
yeah,
saying that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Sign up for the Rec Connect too.
What's that?
If you're not on the Rec
Connect, yeah, sign up for that Rec Connect, everyone. And if you are signed up, make sure to go on there and make sure that your profiles are robust, that you have everything in there that you want in there. And remember, I use this as a way to introduce you to potential mentors. I just recently did this with the San Diego Business Journal. They were in there looking at your profiles, so make sure they look good. All right, everybody, thank you for coming, and we will see everyone again at the next event. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Take care. Oh, and don't forget to fill out the survey. There's a survey in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.